Inside, Celine, the brand that speaks without words. There are brands that scream luxury. And then there's Celine, which dominates the world without ever opening its mouth. And it's precisely this paradox that confuses many people. How can such a silent brand influence fashion, behavior, and even lifestyle more powerfully than labels that thrive on ostentation? The truth is, there's a hidden code behind Celine, a code that few truly understand, but that everyone feels. A code that isn't learned in shop windows, but through perception. Perhaps you've never stopped to think about it, but true luxury isn't in what's visible, it's in what remains. And while some brands compete to see who shines the brightest, Celine has chosen a different strategy, to be unforgettable precisely by not competing. It's almost irritating how well this works. The brand speaks through silence, through perfect cuts, through the absence of excess. It seems counterintuitive, but that's why it evokes so much desire. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, knowing how to be discreet makes one extraordinary. And this is where things get really personal, because this video isn't just about fashion, it's about you, about how presence, elegance, and authenticity can shape the world's perception of you, without you having to explain anything. And as you delve into Celine's narrative, you'll realize that some of that power can also be yours. After all, understanding a brand that speaks without words is learning to communicate with a different kind of force, a force the modern world is desperate to rediscover. The silent essence of Celine, the power of minimalism that never needed to shout. When someone sees a Celine piece for the first time, they don't find flashy prints, excesses, or a logo screaming for attention. And that's precisely where the secret lies. The brand has always understood that true luxury doesn't need explaining. It simply exists, occupies space, imposes its presence, and does so with an almost whispered elegance. It's like that friend who arrives silently, but everyone notices. Celine built its empire on this kind of aura. The quiet essence that the brand carries is the result of a rare philosophy in fashion. Less is not just more, less is power. When a woman wears Celine, she's not trying to convince anyone of who she is. She already knows. That's why the cuts are clean, the fabrics are impeccable, and the structure seems to converse with the body. It's almost as if each piece says, "I am here," and that's enough. This feeling of presence completely changes how someone perceives themselves in the world. This visual silence also teaches a practical lesson. In life, what is left unsaid often weighs more than entire speeches. It's the same principle you see in wise leaders, in people who don't need to raise their voices to be heard. It's the style of someone who reads the power of habit, practices emotional minimalism, and chooses to live intentionally. It's curious how this kind of almost magical elegance paves the way for a deeper understanding of the transformation that will come in the next chapter. Phoebe Philo and the quiet revolution that redefined modern women's fashion. When Phoebe Philo took over Celine, she didn't arrive making a splash. She arrived making a difference. Her vision seemed to defy the common logic of fashion because she chose to create not for the gaze of others, but for the real lives of women. It was as if she saw the inner self before designing the outer self. Her collections had this touch of humanity, almost maternal, that embraced the modern woman without squeezing her. And this completely transformed the consumer's relationship with the brand. Phoebe brought something to fashion that few designers dare to do. Respect. Respect for time, for routine, for the body, for each woman's silent choices. Her clothes became a kind of emotional armor, light, functional, and intelligent. That's why so many women still seek out pieces from the Philo era as if they were relics. They don't just buy fabrics, they buy the feeling of being seen. Anyone who has read Women Who Run with the Wolves understands this kind of freedom well. Phoebe's revolution didn't come with slogans, but with purpose. She showed that sophistication doesn't have to be uncomfortable and that strength doesn't have to be harsh. This silent transformation became almost a cultural movement, inspiring professionals, mothers, leaders, and artists seeking authenticity. And the most curious thing is that, when it seemed that this chapter was consolidated, something unexpected arrived at Celine's door, a drastic change that would open an even more intriguing new phase. The creative clash, the arrival of Hedi Slimane, and the reinvention of storytelling. When Hedi Slimane entered Celine, it was like opening a door and feeling the wind change direction, strong, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. He didn't just take over the brand, he tore up the previous manual and wrote another one without asking permission. And of course, this generated an immediate shock. Many fans of the Phoebe era felt as if they had lost an aesthetic home. But the interesting thing is that, in moments like these, fashion reveals its true nature, inevitable evolution. Hedi brought a sharper, almost rock and roll narrative, with the energy of someone who already knows exactly where they're going. His tight cuts, analog photography, melancholic mood, and Parisian settings created a cinematic atmosphere. He didn't design clothes, he created characters, and that attracted a new audience, younger, more nocturnal, more restless. Anyone who has seen films like Frances Hauer, the Neon Demon, recognizes this aesthetic of chaotic freedom. The rupture was so intense that it divided the fashion community like a never-ending philosophical debate. But while some lamented, others celebrated the courage to reinvent themselves. And there's something powerful in that. Every enduring brand needs aesthetic rebaptisms. Hedi provoked, confronted, and repositioned Celine on the cultural map with an almost electric force. And curiously, this clash between past and future opens up space for us to understand who really wears Celine, the woman who comes next. The Celine woman. Who is she? And why does she inspire so much desire? The Celine woman doesn't need to announce who she is. She lets the world discover her gradually. She has the kind of presence that precedes her, not because she makes a lot of noise, but because she carries an almost magnetic inner clarity. She's the kind of woman who values time, silence, and conscious choices. She likes quality, not quantity, both in her clothes and in the people around her. And it's precisely this tranquil demeanor that inspires so much admiration. She is independent, not just in words, but in her daily life. She's a woman who works, studies, raises children, solves problems, and still finds time to take care of herself, even if it's just a quick coffee with a book like The Courage to Be Imperfect. She chooses clothes that complement her routine, not clothes that compete with it. And this rare balance between strength and gentleness creates an almost inexplicable charm. Anyone who knows a woman like this knows there's a glow that can't be imitated. And perhaps the most interesting thing is that the Celine woman is always silently evolving. She doesn't seek validation, but she seeks truth. She doesn't want to attract attention, but she wants to live well. She inspires because she represents a contemporary ideal, someone who knows her own worth without needing to prove anything. It's as if each of her gestures opens a door for us to understand the power of quiet luxury within human behavior. And this leads us directly to the next point, where this cult transforms into a global trend, an aesthetic that speaks without words, cuts, shapes, colors, and the architecture of silence. Celine's aesthetic functions as its own language, a visual dialect that needs no translation. Each cut is so precise it seems to be freehand drawn in the air before touching the fabric. The shapes are minimalist, but never simplistic. There is intention in every seam, every collar, every movement. The colors follow the same philosophy: earthy tones, deep blacks, calm whites, without competing with each other. It's the kind of clothing that doesn't shout, but occupies space with an elegance that few brands manage to translate. This silent architecture is very similar to what happens when someone decides to organize their own life. They don't change everything at once, but adjust little by little, a habit, an environment, a relationship. If you observe a Celine piece, you'll notice that it conveys precisely that. Balance. In everyday life, it's like choosing to read essentialism to understand what really matters before filling your schedule with tasks. It's the aesthetics of intention, not impulsiveness. And it's curious how these aesthetic choices end up shaping even the behavior of the wearer. Have you ever found yourself walking slower in clothes that make you feel confident? Or speaking more calmly when wearing something that makes you feel present? Celine creates this kind of effect. It refines the rhythm, slows down the mind, and transforms the body into a kind of silent narrative. And it is precisely this restrained presence that has helped the brand become a symbol of quiet, luxury. But this cultural phenomenon deserves a separate chapter. The cult of quiet luxury, how Celine became a benchmark for a new status. The phenomenon of quiet luxury, it wasn't born by chance. It was born out of exhaustion. People began to realize that showing off doesn't mean winning, and that true status lies in not needing to prove anything. That's where Celine emerges as an absolute reference. It offers an aesthetic that conveys power without noise, wealth without ostentation, and presence without exaggeration. It's a luxury that only those who truly understand can recognize, and this creates an almost secret circle of identity. The curious thing is that the quiet luxury, it's not just a fashion trend, but a direct reflection of modern behavior. After so much rushing, so much exposure, and so much searching for validation, people want to breathe. They want peace. They want simplicity with depth. And this manifests itself in choices like buying fewer but better pieces, prioritizing durable materials, reading books like The Miracle Morning to reorganize one's life, and investing in experiences, not appearances. Celine understood this before everyone else. And perhaps the greatest secret of this cult following is the silent sense of belonging it creates. Those who wear Celine don't say, "I have." They say, "I am." It's an identity statement that only appears in the details, in the perfect cut, the impeccable leather, the clean tailoring. This type of luxury speaks to those who see nuance, depth, and purpose. And precisely for this reason, it prepares the ground for something greater, a cultural impact that goes far beyond fashion, entering music, art, and film. Cultural influence. Celine in music, film, art, and real life. Celine's influence transcends any catwalk. It silently infiltrates culture, like a soundtrack you only notice when you pay attention. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers have begun to embrace the brand not for its ostentation, but for the aesthetic depth it delivers. Just look at minimalist music videos, independent films, or more intimate photo editorials. There's always a trace of Celine there. This almost invisible presence shows how the brand speaks to modern sensibilities. In film, for example, the Celine aesthetic appears in those characters who don't need dialogue to dominate a scene. It's in the black and white photography, in contemplative scenes, in the natural light streaming through the window. In music, it emerges in artists who embrace the minimalist look, like Phoebe Bridgers, or even indie bands that use structured suits and basic t-shirts as a manifesto of identity. Even those who consume culture notice wearing Celine is to appear part of a silent artistic movement. And in real life, the influence becomes even more interesting. It's seeing that woman who works in architecture, design, literature, or psychology using a Celine bag as an extension of her own mind. Practical, organized, and aesthetically impeccable. Or that man who prefers understated pieces, but full of personality. The brand ends up functioning as a cultural filter. Those who use Celine see the world with different eyes. And this leads us to the next point. where the brand leaves clues about the future it is building. The silent future, where Celine is going and why the world is watching. Celine's future won't be announced with fireworks. It will be perceived between the lines. The brand is moving towards an even more introspective, almost spiritual luxury, where each piece is designed to last, not just to impress. The search now is for authenticity, sustainability, and emotional design. Those who follow Celine realize that it doesn't chase after time. It anticipates trends, and the entire market is watching, trying to decipher the next step in this powerful silence. There is also a clear movement towards a more mature, more conscious consumer, less driven by trends. This person doesn't buy to show off. They buy to belong to themselves. And Celine understands this almost surgically. Their campaigns are more contemplative, their shows more cinematic, their pieces more structured. It's as if the brand had read The Richest Man in Babylon and decided to build something that withstands the test of time, stone by stone. And yet there's an irresistible mystery in the air. What exactly is Celine preparing? The brand leaves clues, like someone writing a coded diary, a subtle change in the leather, a new silhouette, a video filmed in 16 millimeters. Everything seems to point to an even more artistic, more mature phase, more faithful to modern, quiet luxury. And this elegant suspense creates the perfect hook to engage the viewer. Because when a brand speaks without words, it's impossible not to want to hear what comes next. And now that you've walked with me behind the scenes at Celine, the question that truly matters isn't about the brand, but about you. How have you been presenting yourself to the world? Have you been living as someone who needs to be seen to be validated? Or as someone who knows that true presence doesn't depend on applause? Celine's silent aesthetic reveals something profound. Power lies in essence, not in noise. And perhaps that's the exact point where your life can change, when you decide to build your value on what is consistent, not on what is flashy. So I challenge you. What excesses do you need to remove from your life so that your inner, quiet luxury can emerge? What choices could you simplify? What habits could elevate your self-awareness? For some people, transformation begins with organization. For others, with reading, silence, spirituality, focus. But the important thing is, are you willing to take the first step? Because just like Celine, you can speak without words and still be impossible to ignore. If these ideas resonated with you, sparked your curiosity, or made you see luxury in a completely new way, then don't leave without subscribing to the channel. Turn on notifications to continue immersing yourself in stories like this, which broaden your perspective, challenge your mind, and help you become someone the world recognizes not for your noise, but for your presence. We're just getting started, and I want you with me in the next chapters.